Comrades and friends, welcome to the program Global Weekly News serial number 194. First item, US war on Iran exposes the hollowness of Modi government's foreign policy. The path India is pursuing internationally, yielding to US misadventures, is not only morally and ethically wrong, but is also against the material interests of India and its people. US and Israel launched surprise airstrikes on Iran in the morning of 28th February. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah al-Khamenei, and hundreds of others were killed in the attack. Nearly 180 elementary school girl students were killed in the attacks by US in Iran. A US submarine torpedoed and sank the Iranian ship Iris Dana in the Indian Ocean as it was returning from participating in the multinational naval exercise Milan hosted by India. The Iranian ship took part in ceremonial events including a parade attended by the President of India. Sri Lanka's Navy launched rescue operations and pulled 32 sailors out of the water. Around 160 members of the crew died at sea. Our Vishwaguru Modi became Mauna Guru. The Indian government did not condemn the above attacks, bringing humiliation to our nation. Modi visited Israel on February 25-26 at the invitation of a war criminal, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He was reportedly not invited as an official guest of the state. Modi addressed a parliament session that was boycotted by the entire opposition, while non-members filled up the vacant seats. India's complicity in the US-Israel alliance's aggression against Iran got exposed. Modi might have been informed about the attacks on Iran beforehand. Indian government is always careful not to condemn Israel for its ongoing genocide of Palestinians, all the while expressing support for Israel against the alleged terrorism by Hamas. India was one of the first countries to recognize a Palestine, but the government now shamefully abandoned the Palestinian cause. India's top industrialists are taking part in the production of Israeli drones that are used against Palestinians and Iran people. Iran has long been a strong friend and civilizational neighbor to India. Since late 2000s, India has been downgrading the economic relations with Iran under pressure from the United States. Since 2019, under US sanctions, Iran, which used to be India's second largest supplier of oil, has seen its exports to India nearly dropped to zero. China is importing heavily subsidized or discounted Iranian oil. Iran has allowed India to develop Chabahar port, enabling continued trade with Afghanistan and the wider Central Asian region. The strategic importance of Chabahar port for India cannot be overstated. But Chabahar was reportedly a bomb target on the first day of the US-Israeli joint attacks, in complete disregard for India's interests. North-South corridor aims to connect ports such as Mumbai port to cities like Moscow through a network of sea, rail and road routes. The corridor, conceived jointly by India, Iran and Russia, is of great utility to India. Yet, Indian government has chosen to remain silent in the face of the illegal attacks on Iran. Comrades and friends, second item, the whole news today is of Iran. Second item, Iran posed an imminent threat to United States. Sheer and utter lie. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi rejected claims by the United States President Donald Trump that the US-Israeli attacks were preemptive and said it was just an attempt to justify the illegitimate war. Attacks on United States by Iran, whether preventively or preemptively, is a sheer and utter lie, Araghchi said in a post on X. Trump in a press conference declared that if the US had not attacked Iran, it was 100% sure that Iran would have attacked the US within a week. Israel and the United States launched a series of joint airstrikes in Tehran, the capital of Iran, and other parts of Iran on 28 February. While the ongoing negotiations on Iran's nuclear program almost about to reach an amicable solution. 1,200 people, including the Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and about 180 elementary school girls were killed so far. Iran has issued a forceful response to the US-Israeli strikes and launched attacks on numerous US bases in the neighboring Gulf and Arab countries and against Israel. Scores of Israeli citizens and US soldiers have also been killed and many injured in Iran's retaliatory strikes. Iran has also blocked the Strait of Hormuz, effectively stopping the supply of a quarter of the world's energy needs, provoking a rise in global oil prices and shortages of cooking gas in several countries in Asia, mostly dependent on imports from West Asia. Meanwhile, Israel has intensified attacks against Lebanon with airstrikes. Over 600 people were killed and displaced nearly 8 lakh citizens. During a phone conversation with the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, Abbas Araghchi, the Foreign Minister of Iran, reiterated Iran's right to self-defense under international law. Iran noted that during the war so far, Israel and the US have targeted various civilian centers, including schools, hospitals, and historical monuments, in complete violation of international law and human rights. Iranian oil depot near Tehran were also bombed by Israeli-US forces. The Iranian Red Crescent Society said that at least 20,000 civilian sites have been attacked by the United States Israeli airstrikes, including 77 medical centers, 65 educational institutions, and 16 relief centers run by Crescent Society itself. Araghchi demanded the UN immediately intervene to condemn Israeli-US violations of international law and safeguard international peace and security. Third item, comrades, as the United States wages war for regime change in Iran, Iran reaffirms continuity. Iran's Assembly of Experts announced on 8th March the appointment of Ayatollah Sayyid Mustafa Khamenei, aged 56, as the third supreme leader of the Islamic Republic. Mustafa is the second son of late supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, assassinated by US attacks on 28 February. Mustafa has considerable political clout, influence, and well-established experience in military and security-related matters. The Israeli occupation forces spokesperson said, everyone who tries to inherit the throne of terror and everyone who participates in installing a successor to a regime that ignited wars and destruction in the region will know that the reckoning is not yet over. Comrades and friends, item number 4, protests against the US-Israeli war on Iran across Europe. On 7th March, over 30,000 people joined a demonstration in London protesting the illegal war waged by the United States and Israel against Iran. Thousands more took to the streets in other European countries, including Germany and Austria, all demanding an end to the war and for governments to respect sovereignty and international law. On the day of the protest, Stop the War coalition's Chris Ninehaum said it was disgraceful that Keir Starmer's government allowed British bases and resources to be used to promote chaos in West Asia. According to recent polls, 59% of British people oppose attacks on Iran. The British government has cleared the use of some of its bases, including those on Cyprus, for US armed forces. Italy and France have on the one hand made statements that they are not taking part in the attacks on Iran, but then proceeded to deploy their own naval capacities to Cyprus. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has not only avoided condemning attacks on Iran, but also suggested that international law should not necessarily apply in its case. Ahead of a recent solidarity rally in Berlin, the German Communist Party said the Chancellor's position should be condemned because it stands alongside the aggressors. Item number 5. Health movements denounce US-Israeli attacks on Iran. Health movements and associations have joined calls for peace after the US and Israel launched illegal attacks on Iran on 28th February. They warned that the assault on Iran is certain to have devastating impacts on the population, risking to repeat the destruction of healthcare facilities seen in the Gaza Strip during Israel's genocide. Since the attacks began, Iran reported health facilities damaged by US and Israeli forces bomb attacks, including key medical centers. Despite repeated calls by the World Health Organization to respect international law and protect medical spaces during armed conflict, systematic targeting and dismantling of Palestinian healthcare since October 23 was done by Israel. The People's Health Movement said US-Israel attacks amount to an act of war that endangers the civilian population living in the region in pursuit of domination over natural resources, trade routes, and the entire region. Health workers also pointed to grave dangers posed by possible damage to nuclear facilities, which could cause widespread devastation and significant releases of radioactivity. The situation could escalate into a regional war and ultimately lead to the use of nuclear weapons, which the world most needs to prevent. Item number 6. ASEAN countries adopt emergency measures to cut fuel consumption. Countries across Asia depend on imported oil and gas from the Gulf countries that are currently facing major logistical challenges to export due to the Strait of Hormuz closure. Qatar, one of the world's largest exporter of natural gas, also announced the suspension of production due to the war. Over 30% of the world's crude oil trade passes and 20% of global liquefied natural gas exports pass through the Strait of Hormuz. On 7th March, the Indian government announced an increase in the price of cooking gas cylinder by ₹60, citing the war as the cause of the price rise. The Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas also issued a rationing order on 9th March, prioritizing essential services for supply of LPG cylinders. Already hotels and restaurants shut down their businesses in different cities due to shortages of cooking gas. Oil prices standing at around $60 per barrel before 28 February, almost doubled to $120 as of now. Left parties in India have claimed that the government's policies are solely responsible for the energy crisis as they fail to assess the impact of the war and shape a response on time. Pakistan's government increased fuel prices by 20% last week in what is considered to be the largest one-time increase over. On 9th March, Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif announced a 4-day work for the public sector and a 2-week national school closure to minimize the consumption of energy products. In the Philippines, the adoption of a 4-day work for public sector employees was announced. Fuel prices were also increased. Vietnam has asked the people to avoid unnecessary use of vehicles and work from home. Protests against the war are taking place in many of the Asian countries, including India. Left and progressive forces in countries such as Malaysia, Philippines, South Korea have organized protests against the war on Iran and demanded an immediate end to all hostilities. Item number 7. Iran suspends participation in World Cup 2026. Iran will not participate in the men's football World Cup to be held in the US, Mexico and Canada between June and July this year. Iranian Minister of Sports announced on 11th March, considering that this corrupt regime assassinated our leader, under no circumstances can we participate in the World Cup, the minister said. Item number 8. We won't work for your wars. European working women warn. Women across Europe protested militarization, austerity and the far right in massive International Working Women's Day demonstrations. Wherever military spending increases, sacrifices are imposed on those who keep the world going, from healthcare to education. In Slovenia, protesters marched to oppose plans to introduce military service. March 8 is for everyone who dreams of a world without violence, poverty and inequality. Feminist groups in Bulgaria wrote on the occasion of International Working Women's Day. Last item, comrades. Shield of the Americas, Trump's new tune. Leaders of governments that have aligned themselves almost entirely behind Washington's geopolitical interests. Argentina, Bolivia, Costa Rica, Dominican Republic, El Salvador, Guyana, Ecuador, Honduras, Panama, Paraguay, Trinidad and Tobago and Chile attended a summit in Florida of the United States. The so-called Shield of the Americas, an alliance between 13 countries, was formed to preserve US hegemony, comrades. Thank you, comrades. Lal Salam. See you next week.